Recording in progress.
February 15th, and another session, another monthly meeting for the Access to Town Meeting Committee. This meeting is being recorded, and we do have a quorum tonight. So looking at the agenda. First item, as we always have, is open forum or announcements. Lynn Cohen was planning to join us. Lynn, are you there? She may be running a bit late too. Lynn, I'll jump in. Because Lynn had sent me a note after I sent the agenda out, and I didn't get around to updating the agenda. She wanted us to revisit or at least finalize the League of Women Voters request of putting the banner as a recommendation.
Diane, Lynn is here. I just promoted her to panelist. So Lynn, you can unmute yourself and talk if you'd like.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Hey, Lynn.
Oh, right. So I hope I didn't hear what Diane just said, so I don't know if I'm repeating her. But I sent you all a memo from the league, so I hope you got it. And I know it's not on the agenda, so I know you're not going to make any decisions, but I really just wanted to know if you had any questions or you needed any clarification on what my memo said.
We did discuss this initially, but we really didn't close on it. And that's why we're talking about this now. So we do have quorum. If we want to actually take a vote to accept this as a recommendation that we will add to our list, we can do so.
Diane, if you don't mind my saying, I don't think you can because it wasn't on the agenda. I think the open meeting law basically says, I believe, you really can't take a vote on something that was not on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Understood.
So my memo was just really following up on the memo I sent we sent you a couple of months ago. And then when Denali and I were here at the meeting, there were some questions, and it was obviously we needed to clarify a few things. I hope this new memo does that. And
Angela?
I was just going to say that I think we can, I think you can probably discuss it under the update to the select board item, because when we discussed it initially, we put it in, I think you put it in with the rest of the things that we were going to discuss for bringing to the select board at a future meeting, at the first meeting. So I think I think we're safe to just, okay, that's
it's fine.
Okay, Angela, it's not in the presentation.
Oh, okay.
But from an open, if we are evaluating the open meeting and whether or not this constitutes, I'll take anyone's guidance on this. So, thoughts? Well, first of all, are there any additional questions? So there are no additional questions, but Lynn was saying and Angela was saying we can't actually take a vote because an agenda item saying we're going to take a vote is not on the agenda?
That's my understanding. Now, as Angela said, if it was in some other part of your your agenda, such as the update for the select board, that's then different, but I don't know what's in your recommendation. If it's not in your recommendation, I don't think you can, under the open meeting law, actually take a vote, but who cares?
Okay, so let's do this. Let's do this. Your first question was to members, are there any questions?
Right, really.
So I haven't heard any. If people do have questions, speak up. And what we'll do is we'll put this as a vote item for March, because we still have, it's not an issue for timing here.
Right.
I just wanted to put one thing to bed and move on. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Lynn, are you okay with that?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Diane, I just had a question, and I don't really want to rat hole us too early, but I guess my process question is how we see votes happening. Like, would it be once we sort of corral all of our recommendations in for April, and then we would vote on like a list of recommendations going to select board? Or are we going to do some of these individually as they come up? I guess that's part of the problem I'm struggling with at the moment.
Okay, so that, moving down to the agenda, that's part of the discussion for number 5. Collection, consolidation of information, how we're putting this all together, how we're putting the recommendations together, how the presentation of those recommendations, will there be a vote, will there be a priority?
Okay, I'll save my question for
Yeah,
them.
so that is indeed something we need to do. So I'm totally on board, but it was going to be discussed, down here.
Got it. Thank you.
Part and parcel of that, if that helps. Okay, so unless there are any questions, I think, or any other open forum comments or announcements. If not, we can close the open forum. Lynn, unless you're welcome to stay, but obviously free to go. And
thank you.
actually vote on it next month.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay. And then the next agenda item are the minutes. The 3.5-page minutes that Stephanie sent out. I applaud her for all the level of detail. And it just occurred to me, Linda was scheduled to take minutes, but she's not going to be able to stay here for the whole meeting. So I apologize, I should have jumped in. And we need a volunteer for the minutes for tonight.
I'll do it, Diane.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
I had asked Eric, but I sent him off an email, but I hadn't heard back from him. So,
Hi there. I'm woefully behind in my emails. This is what I'm learning about the email that you sent about that, Diane. So apologies.
Okay. Well, are you in a position to take minutes tonight, Eric, or is this blindsiding you?
Yeah, I'm blindsided. I'll let Christina stay in the position.
That's fair.
But hey, here's where I pledged. Next meeting, I'll take the minutes.
Well, you're gonna have to duke it out with Linda.
I'll be Linda's backup then.
And duke it out with Sally, because everyone is saying the same thing. Okay, Christina, thank you very much.
Okay.
So Christina will be minute taker for tonight. So we've got the January 24th minutes. Were there any questions about the minutes?
Christina has her hand up.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so does Tom. Under open forum, I think it is, in those minutes, it was the issue that I brought up about potentially not mailing the FinCom book. And it says that there's an alternate option of sending a 1 to 5 page mailer. That's not an option. We'll send a 1-page announcement to people.
But during the meeting, was the 1 to 5 page option thrown on the table?
If it was, I did not accept it. So
Okay.
no, I don't believe so. That was never part of my plan.
Okay. So we're going to take out that option. Any other comments about the minutes? Tom?
Thank you. Yeah, I just have two corrections. Number one, my name is missing from the attending list.
Whoa,
So if you could add me back in there. And also on the last page, looks like the second paragraph where it says Angela Harkness would like Tom Barry, Steve Edwards, Eric Bavamingo, and Mike Ware. That should be Mike Wells.
okay, apologies. I'm
Not a
supposed to be the second set of eyes on this, and apparently I didn't do my job, so
No, not a problem. Other than that, I think they're fine.
thank you, Tom.
Motion to approve January 24th, 2022 minutes.
All in favor?
Need a
Aye.
second.
Yep. So Christina,
Hang on, who seconded?
I did.
I did. We
Tom?
both did.
Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got Tom in there. Okay, vote though now? Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Valerie,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So unanimous, thank you. Okay, moving on, updates. Update to the select board, which is next Tuesday. And we mentioned this at last meeting. So we have a presentation on for February 22nd to the select board. It's a brief PowerPoint presentation and hitting the highlights, our charter, the members, the working groups, some examples of both our town questionnaire and the community survey. But the key question may be coming from the select board is when are we going to return with our recommendations? I suspect that'll be a question. So we need to talk about that and giving everyone enough time, giving the committee enough time to pull the information together, to do the analysis. And as this is included in the next section, as Valerie's question, how we're going to determine recommendations, do we prioritize them? What is the level of detail that we're going to need? So knowing all of that is going to need to be done, when do people think that we would be in a position to report out to the select board? Valerie.
Sorry, I saw Christina raise her hand at the same time.
Oh, I can't see, so thank you.
I can't speak for other working groups and other internal conversations sort of that are happening and how that data is percolating, but from the resident input group, I would say that I think we have reviewed the data and digested the data ourselves preliminarily, and would like to sort of bring the meat of that data to this full committee for to see like what comes out of that as far as recommendations. I personally could see us doing like 2 business meetings in March and getting to recommendations in early April for the select board to be able to implement them in time for June.
Does that give, so you think that would give enough time for the other committee members to meet, to review, to prioritize? We also have to do some background. There may be some background needed.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the other groups, but I guess that's my perspective from our resident group. Do you mind closing the agenda so we can all see each other?
Any other comments? Christina, your group?
So We're still gathering some data from some other towns that did not respond to the survey, but towns that we were interested in. And our group is not going to be ready to get back together until the first week of March. So I think we could pull it together to bring to this committee in March. I just don't know if that's going to be too much to do in March, along with the other working group.
Yeah, there's just a lot going on, and I'm going back and forth with many of you regarding, timing and windows, and seems that everybody's stretched. So I just, whatever date we come up with, just want to have everybody think it through, be really comfortable, regarding it. That's all. Tom?
Yeah, Diane, I had sent you the, excuse me, the summary of the remote participation work group in late January sometime. And there's really no change to that. I mean, if you wait until March or April, we may add a couple of things to it, some minor issues. But, as I've said right along, this is going to be a lengthy process for this group. So I don't see any changes coming, at a rapid pace. So I think even if you went in February, you could use that summary that we supplied in late January.
So will you be able to, the email with all your tasks speaks about researching. Will there be any additional information other than researching to any other, level of detail?
I don't think there will be any, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there'll be any other hard research information that you can put into our presentation, our portion of the presentation. Again, this is going to be a long, slow process for our group.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that assessment. I mean, just because of the nature of things that we're thinking about, it's all going to, I think what we can talk about to the select board is kind of already captured in Tom's paper. These are the ideas, these are the things, that we maybe have to build a framework around. But, there isn't going to be anything solid. Well, this is done. This can be implemented in our next town meeting or anything like that.
Well, I know you wouldn't get to that level, but anything more than we will need state approval, we will need a charter change, we will need something along those lines. You don't think you'll be there, right?
Not really. That really moves the needle very much.
Okay.
Not for February, no.
Yeah, I think
not talking February. This is for the final. This isn't for February.
Yeah, I just think it's going to take a while, Diane,
Okay.
for us to even understand what we don't understand. if you get what I'm saying. I mean, there's a lot that would have to happen over the course of a year or something, but we don't even know yet what we don't know. And there's going to be certainly some major legal changes that would have to take place if they could happen at all, as they did during the pandemic. I mean, if we had started this 2 years ago, we might be a little further along than we are now.
Okay. Anybody else have any other comments? Christina.
I'll just add. So it might be a stretch to get it for April, but I think I'm willing to try, because it would be nice to be able to implement something for this town meeting in June, and that gives some time. Otherwise, we're looking at trying to do it for special town meeting, which just is never quite the big boom that the annual town meeting is. So I would say we shoot for April. And even if we don't have everything finalized, I mean, certainly the longer term working group, the remote working group, isn't going to have anything by then. But I think we can probably come up with at least some recommendations by then. Yeah, Valerie's nodding her head too. Okay, yeah.
So I'm looking at the May calendar. I'm sorry, the April, we said April, right? So we've got the 5th and the 19th.
Angela, question, should we assume that the clicker group that you pulled together and you're leading, is that going to be a separate recommendation from the ATM group? Or would that be, you're muted?
I would like to get a buy-in from this group by way of a vote, but I'm perfectly happy going forward with it, either without that or after that, on my own. If anyone, if I call out desperately for help and someone wants to help me, that's great. But you know, I was trying to keep that from becoming another issue for you guys, because it's kind of in a different place than everything else you're doing, because we've already investigated it once. So I mean, my real intent was for that not to bog you down any more than you already are encumbered with the other different things you're looking at.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that that's not something that Diane will need to include in her presentation.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
for next week, it won't be. However, it could be just a simple recommendation among many recommendations that are made. Just like the banner, we could, once we vote on, agree that we're going to recommend the town pick up the banner. Would that not be another simple recommendation if that's the direction we went in?
I mean, that, from my point of view, that would be great. And I would accept that if that's what you decide to do, without any expectation of anything more than that. I mean, I think that the support of this committee by way of a vote would be great for me to walk around town with, you know, along with the Board of Selectmen or whoever else is appropriate, you know, and be able to tell people that this has been looked at and voted on and so on by the Access to Town Meeting Committee, the Select Board. I mean, that's what I would hope to do in the course of public education.
Okay, do we need to decide that tonight?
Well, why don't we wait till we get to my item, and then you can decide if you want to decide tonight.
Well, those are two separate issues I see. The one is whether or not, if everybody agrees, we would actually have it on a recommendation list, right? That's all I'm asking. If we agree that this all makes sense for the clicker and the product choice, it would simply just like the banner. So we can wait, you know, from what I'm hearing. Okay, so we're back to the dates, right?
I would echo what Christina said about whatever we have by that first week of April would make sense to return with. The longer we wait, the less likely they are to be implemented. Even if things are sort of half formed, I would rather them get in front of the select board at that point than and kind of be a TBD or in progress than to push it out into May or something and have the hesitancy come from the timeline.
Right, I wasn't thinking about May. I was simply thinking the second meeting in April. But if people feel really comfortable with pulling this all together and knowing, you know, what's out there, that's fine too.
So we say an April meeting, or do you want a date on it?
We could say in April for my presentation for Tuesday. That's a good suggestion. And simply say April. We'll return in April.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. So does everybody agree? I mean, makes it right. That makes sense to me. So let's go with that. We'll just say April. We're not going to be pushed on which meeting in April. And so we'll just come back in April and leave it at that. Okay, that's done. And Christina.
Just one little, I think that sounds fine. If pushed, maybe I'd go for the 19th, but I don't think you need to answer.
Right,
Just to give us a little bit of time.
right.
I think the other thing is we might want to plant the seed with them that we're going to be coming with recommendations, and we are not necessarily going to be the ones implementing those recommendations.
Right.
So they start thinking about staff or whatever.
Right. So the discussion, obviously, Christine's alluding to is who's going to do this. So we'll come with recommendations, but the who, we got the what, and now we need the who. So who's going to be doing that? And asking for their, that's what the ask is. That's what the ask would be in that particular case. Right. Their call to action. Who's going to be implementing these recommendations? Okay. So I hear for next Tuesday, at least, that if asked, or we'll tell them we're coming back in April with the recommendations, and we're working through, the working groups right now. Okay, that sounds good. As far as the presentation is concerned, when I hit the button to send it for the packet, I'll send all of you, your version of the PowerPoint. It's about 12, 15 slides. And again, nothing new, talks about just summary of what our charter is, who the members are, what the examples of the survey, examples of the questionnaire. And, the last slide will be a return in April, regarding that. This is mostly just a show and tell and to provide some input to select board as to what we're doing behind the scenes, and for those members of the community who may watch, to give them some insight as to what's everybody is doing. Does that work? Okay. And then I think we jump to updates. Okay, Tom, you already spoke about, did you want to add anything at this point? To your update on remote participation working group?
Yeah, I'll just give a very brief summary of what's gone on. That we met on January 27th. We had a quorum. That means 2 out of 3. So
Tom and I had a very intimate conversation.
We did. Yeah, it was a good meeting. So Eric and I just briefly talked again about the, what needs to take place to do some research on the legal aspects of moving forward with potential electronic access to town meeting. I know that sounds easy, but it's incredibly difficult because aside from, I think, a couple of towns with representative forms of government, that's about as far as this has gone, even through the pandemic. On the second thing, I just wanted to mention 3 bullets tonight, and I won't take any of Angela's thunder. Steve and I are on a committee along with Mike Wells, led by Angela, on the clicker potential for town meeting. I think we've had at least 4, maybe 3, 4, either 4 or 5 meetings, 4 since the last ATM meeting. And I'll let Angela give you all the details on that. I think we've come a long way. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, I know I keep bringing up Salem, New Hampshire as a guidepost, but Salem, New Hampshire did have a meeting I think they had a meeting in January, but this is where residents can call in or go physically to the auditorium. But they definitely had one in February, which I couldn't attend, but my daughter gave me some updates from it. And it's a deliberative session where they talk about every warrant article. It's almost like we're sitting in town meeting. Anybody there, and I think anybody that wanted to call in can ask questions, they can make motions, they can, add add things to add a line to a motion, whatever. That all takes place in that February. I didn't put down the date. I think it was about a week ago in that session. And then it ends up with the final warrant article, I guess I'll call it, for lack of a better term. And then the final motion for the warrant article, and I think this year there's something like 30 some odd warrant articles in the town of Salem. Those will be sent out to all the residents, and then they will go to the polls I'm sorry, I don't have the date, but sometime in early March, and they will actually vote on the officials that are running for office and these 30 odd warrant articles. So it's already been discussed primarily in February, but also in January. And the voters will go to the polls and vote. So that's how it works in Salem. And obviously, I think as Steve has pointed out, between the deliberative session in February and the actual voting in March, there would be some politicking. You know, if I had a warrant article, I would try to get as many people to go to the polls in March with, voting for my article. So I'm pretty sure that's basically how it's going to work in Salem. And it works very well. They've been doing that for quite a while. I think that was it, Diane. I didn't mean to go on that long.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Tom. Okay. The next, Christina, or is it Valerie?
I'll go.
Yep.
So just to recap, we sent out our survey through Angela, through the Mass Moderators Association. And we ended up with about 40 responses in the end. As Angela sent out kind of another, or had the MMA, I believe, send out kind of another ping after our last meeting, and we got another 20, which was nice. That again has slowed down, and we kind of figure, okay, we probably got as many as we're going to get at this point. So the last time our group met, we went through the list of who had responded, and we had an original list of who we would like to hear from, because we felt that those were sort of market basket towns. And we kind of compared, and we did have maybe, I want to say 20 or 30% of the ones that we wanted to hear from, we actually did hear from. And then there were several others that we didn't hear from. So we split up the list of roughly 30 towns, and we were each going to go off and do a little more research on our 10. It was either going to be a follow-up because they had originally answered the survey and we were going to go back and ask a little bit more information, or we were going to go out and try to get information from the ones that didn't answer the survey, either trying to go through their town clerk or just looking on their website, or however each one of us wanted to try to gather some data. So that's the place we are now. We decided that we'll be able to get together March 1st to come back together and see what everybody got, and then we'll analyze the data and be ready to bring it back to everyone else.
Thank you. Do you need any assistance from other team members, myself, or anybody here that could jump in?
Possibly, but I'll let you know after a couple of days.
Okay. Okay, because synthesizing through all of that, right? And okay, thank you.
Right.
Okay, Valerie, community surveys.
So I guess it kind of depends on if you want me to walk through like just a quick update, or to start sharing some of the themes that we're seeing in the questions. I personally could see I know we have kind of a low night of attendees, and I feel like this survey data is going to get to a point where we need to sort of have everyone weigh in on which themes to turn into recommendations. So I don't want to sort of take everyone's time to do it tonight if we're going to dive into that in detail at another meeting. But just for, I guess, a brief update, we're up to almost 800 responses. And at the last meeting, we were around 450-ish. So that second push really was valuable. As a reminder, we had it, online. We did, I think the second push had a bit more like peer-to-peer networking through emails and committees and that sort of thing. There was still the physical locations for Road and Bush, the senior center, the library, and the town clerk. And we have gotten maybe 20-ish physical surveys turned in, but obviously the overwhelming majority have been online. Angela did the letter to the editor in the Action Unlimited and through Wicked Local, I think, right?
Mhm.
So I think that was helpful too, because it's just even nice, even if we didn't get a bunch of results that way, I had someone specifically mention Action Unlimited as a communication method. So I'm glad that we kind of checked that box. Even with that kind of second slew of responses, the answers haven't changed. They just reinforced the top answers from the initial push, which were the top answers to the question, what makes attending challenging or impossible, are conflicts with either events, activities, or work, the length of meeting, and then a fair amount of people just choose the answer, it's not challenging for me to attend. And then childcare comes up under the group of people who rarely and never attend, use that as like their third or fourth ranked reason. Our demographics didn't really change with the second push of responses. Everything just kind of doubled down, which was reassuring. And like I said, I think we're combing through the write-in responses, a few hundred write-in responses, to look for major themes of what people are really, talking about, wanting to see changed. And I think those could be turned into good, like, meaty discussions about what that means and how we can take those obstacles for people and turn them into recommendations. And a lot of them are very aligned and reminiscent of our initial committee when we initially came together and brainstormed just ad hoc, the 15 of us, from what we have heard and what we have seen. It's like full circle, right? Like, we're going to get to a lot of the same places that we had originally gotten to, but now we have sort of the evidence and the data to point to and back that up. So, just the speed of the meeting, disinterest in attending, more education. There was actually a fair amount in the write-in responses to kind of wondering aloud about going virtual. And then, to Tom's group's report out, like, a fair amount too of wondering, could this be a ballot vote? Like, what are the other alternatives? But I do think there's a fair amount of sort of that low-hanging fruit that we could use to make improvements in time for June.
Okay. I think we talked about this originally, when do you consider the end date for people submitting surveys? I asked that because Westford Academy, their Friday newsletter, when asked about how long they should run the article, Angela's article, I said through the end of the month. So I don't want people, getting, misleading if we don't think if we've already kind of capped off, or we will this week or whatever. Maybe I'll have her stop running the article.
Yeah, so I think that's, I don't want to make that decision in a bubble, right? That's certainly open to this committee and the discussion we have, but I think that we're petering out. I think we did a good second push. And we, one thing we talked about is sort of the longevity of a survey, of the usefulness of a survey as a tool that could crop up around town meeting. Like a reoccurring survey that sort of says, did you miss it? Tell us what kept you from attending, or did you, like something around the actual event again, to capture when it's a little bit more fresh in everyone's mind about what, why they couldn't get there again, or what they thought was missing. I think there's a possibility for some future like that, but at the moment, I think we have enough to, say that we did our due diligence and can make some, draw some conclusions from what we have. There's no, we can decide whether to like officially close the website so that if someone found it through a flyer that we don't get a chance to pull down or something, that they would get a message saying it's closed, or we can just kind of leave it open and let a handful continue to trickle in. But I would say that we're basically wrapping up.
Okay, so I'll pull the WestfordCAT, this Friday's newsletter. We're saying we don't need it in there, right? So that goes.
If it's up to me, yeah.
Right. Anybody else have any, other input that they want to, any thoughts on this? Tom?
Valerie, we had, excuse me, you had sent out flyers to post, and I know a number of people were going to post them in their areas. I live at the village at Stone Ridge, and I had put up a number of flyers. I don't know if that got any, but I assume it got some responses. Should we be taking those down at this point?
Yeah, I think barring this discussion, that's sort of where I'm personally at. Yeah. Okay. I think we'll all sort of do our best. Some of the businesses, I think, will take them down on their own, but we should certainly, if you posted a flyer, try to retrace your steps and pull them down unless anyone has objections to that.
Okay.
Would that apply to the physical copies at the?
Yeah, we should pull those in.
Okay.
That would be a good action for everybody. If you, as part of this committee, ended up putting flyers up, retrace your steps and take them down. So we'll all be responsible, right, for the ones that we put up. And that would help, divide up the tasks. Okay.
So as far as a next step, I feel like our group could share, and just to make it more efficient, I think we could share sort of a written summary of the major themes that we've noticed to get all the members sort of brainstorming in preparation for a March meeting to turn those into recommendations, if that sounds reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think until we see them, we're not going to know, but I think that's a great proposal.
Yep.
Right. Let's see what we've got, and then we can talk it through, from there, unless anybody else has other ideas. Okay. As far as, let's go back to meetings, since everybody's time is so precious. So the suggestion was that we had 2 business meetings in March. And do we want to look at the dates on that now and get that out of the way?
Well, I guess the flip side of that is if there's, like when I look at our normal kind of agenda, right, the select board update would come off it. I guess we could start with one sooner in March and see if we need a second one. right? Like, I guess I just don't want to try to squeeze it into our normal agenda if we're looking for people that like if we're looking to replicate that lively discussion that we had when we first convened, I would want to just make sure that we protect the ability and the time to do that.
Okay, so our normal meeting in March is the 15th. So our monthly meeting is the 15th. So we could, then we're into, I'll throw it out. Anybody have any suggestions? I can do a doodle poll if we end up wanting to do that. No, I mean, the reality is not everybody's going to make every meeting,
Sure.
right? So we just have to accept that from there. So I know people have other commitments and I can't, but we're going to have to come up with some dates and just kind of stick to them, and we'll work amongst ourselves as many as people can attend.
Diane, are we sticking with the off Tuesdays, off from select board meetings?
Well, I was just looking at the calendar. I was going to say the 8th, but that's right.
Right, that's the select board. Yeah.
We could do the 1st if that's not that far away, though, if we're talking about a Tuesday.
All right. I think March 15th makes a lot of sense.
That's our regular meeting, though.
Yeah. Oh,
So we're suggesting, right?
For the working group.
To get us all together so we can actually look at the themes as Valerie suggested, and or look at the information from the town questionnaire and start to help whittling through that.
So, Valerie, would your working group be ready for a March 1st meeting? We would not. The other towns would definitely not, because we're meeting on March 1st to kind of start that process. But
I would say we have a preliminary list of main themes from the survey already compiled. Aside from, sharing the raw survey data, that's pretty much what would, I think, foster the discussion. So that's ready.
So we're saying,
I mean, Dana, Sally, feel free to chime in. That's what I kind of see happening.
I was just gonna say, I feel like we already have a pretty good handle on the common themes that have been for the write-ins. So I don't think there needs to be a whole lot more of effort put into that. But I also, if we just, like, maybe this is what we were just saying we were going to do, what we were doing. And
I can barely hear you, Dana.
Hang on. Is that better?
I can hear you.
It must be at my end.
If we just sent it around to the whole committee as an email and everyone took the time between now and then or whenever to review it. So if we did have a piece of it in our regular meeting, I feel like you said, it's so much of the same information that's already been discussed. I don't think there'd be any major surprises that would warrant like a whole other discussion.
So I got half of that. Are we saying that March 1st would work?
I think it's just about, do we think that talking about, like, say speed is a major theme from the survey, right? And the speed of the meeting is a concern. Then to me, it's a little open-ended on the number of ways that you can try to improve that, right? Mm-hmm. So then the discussion that feeds off of each one of those major themes could each spin off into a somewhat meaty discussion. I mean, I don't know, maybe please feel free to tell me if I'm off in left field. I don't know. I guess feel like these 6 or 7 major themes could each spin off into a handful of recommendations of different things, and trying to get some consensus on what those would look like, I think could be a bit involved.
I also think, like with your example with speed, I feel like you're right. There's probably a bunch of different ways to to tackle that. But then some of the other really common themes, like a virtual or remote participation, we don't even know if that would even be allowed. So even if that is the overwhelming suggestion from these responses, I mean, someone can correct me, but we don't even know if that would even be allowed, right? So I feel like even though there's so many people that want that, it could potentially be, it could be a recommendation, but we really wouldn't be able to come up with too many ways to implement it because it would be beyond our control.
What if we like aim for early in March to have a business meeting, but devote a chunk of the meeting agenda to this? And then worst comes to worst, we would try to squeeze in another one at the end of March, right? Like, does that sort of make more sense?
We have to start somewhere, so I'm fine with that. Angela?
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. If you're talking about 2 business meetings in March and you guys are pretty much ready to engender the discussion, you can have one about, and I think you might want to just devote it entirely to that. This is what the committee's all about. Have your presentation of facts and then have the discussion and try to come up with some recommendations out of that. And then have the second one for Christina's group at the end of March.
Sally, do you have your hand raised?
Yep. And I'm sorry for showing up late. I had a conflicting meeting. If we met on March 15th, what I was wondering is if we could report out our results via email to the whole committee so that people would have a chance to digest it and think about things like when we say that one of the major themes is the speed of the meeting. Everyone can have a chance to have already thought about some possible solutions. Maybe if we put it off till March 15th, but if we provide the information by March 1st for everyone to think about for those 2 weeks, I wonder if that would be a more productive meeting. But would that give us enough time for the next meeting? It would be my only concern. The next meeting then would fall.
So I think we're going to need 2.
Yeah, March 29th would be then the second.
Yeah, that's not leaving a lot of time if we're going to report out to the select board and to get the packet in and to create what we need to create. That's a little tight for that. But we could do the 1st and the 5th. We could just negate the 15th as a typical meeting, then use the 15th as a working meeting. So the 1st and the 15th.
That would be my vote.
Christine, you?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because in effect, this is the priority. So what else we're going to talk about on the 15th? So if Valerie, would you and your team be ready if you sit down information? Okay, so you'd be ready for the 1st. We'll drill through the 1st on the 1st, and we'll go through and see what the recommendations are that funnel off of those themes. And then if we wrap up, hopefully, we'll at least have the 15th to do Christina's, and if there's any leftover.
I can't make the 1st. I don't know if it matters since I'm part of that working group, but I'm also.
I can't make the 1st either, unfortunately. But again, if everybody else can make it, then.
And if our piece, Sally, can, like we've already been working on, it's just compiling the information and either helping it get into some kind of presentation or an email to go out.
Well,
then if that could be, and wouldn't be part of the discussion.
To the same suggestion you guys, I think you both had redundantly, was to think of any solutions ahead of time, right? So if you were like, if we're sharing something ahead of time and you're like, here's what I thought of for that, or here's what I think of for this, it can always be kind of shared by proxy.
And I would hope the rest of the team members would do that too, so we don't walk in on the 1st blind. So when we're down, we're down to the detail at this level, so we really need to put a little extra effort in, reading the input from both teams and thinking about some creative solutions or some, suggestions based on those themes. And it may be clear cut. I mean, childcare can't get too complicated, but who knows once you start talking about it. In contrast to the example of Eller you brought up, right?
Yep, I think that sounds good.
Tom?
Diane, I hate to say this, but I'm not available on either the 1st or the 15th. I'll be up in the sky in a plane on the 1st, and on the 15th, I'm away also.
Tom and I will both be in the sky. We're not on the same plane, but I happen to be traveling on the 1st myself. The 15th is fine for whatever, but I know I'm in the air on the 1st.
Yeah.
So is the whole team, is the whole committee in a position, you may not be able to attend, but are you in a position to review the input and make recommendations via email?
Yep.
That I can do.
Yep, I can do that.
So that seems to be a compromise. We won't have the back and forth, but if that's what we have to live with, that's what we'll live with. I mean.
So I hate to bring this up, but are we going to have a quorum?
Oh.
Right. If we're talking about the whole committee, it looks like a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess at this point, do we want to shoot for the 1st, send something out after this meeting? If we only have 4 people, then we'll have to find a new date, but I would maybe suggest to do something else. I don't even know if that any other day that week works, but, or maybe go to the 8th. The 8th, you can't do the 8th. Okay. I don't know.
I think you really have to do a doodle poll.
I think so.
I was just going to say the same thing.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do a doodle poll. But right off, I don't want to take up the time, so never mind. I was going to say, can I eliminate 30, how many days? 20 days? Any of those 20 business days out of this, right?
I would do the first 2 weeks of March in the doodle poll, like the Monday through Thursday of those 2 weeks, right? And just see what falls out from there.
Okay, let's at least get one done. And we'll see what we could do as we move on. So if that sounds good, that'll be the plan, that'll be the approach. Any questions? So in my mind, things are going to get worse, not better, as far as commitments are concerned. Okay. And I think that wraps up what we needed for the working group. And unless there's any more questions, we'll talk about the clickers. Angela.
Okay, try to be as efficient as I can. So I started by going through the different providers that other towns are using. And there were essentially 4 providers. And even though a number of towns use Turning Technologies, I did sort of eliminate them after I went to their website. It really looked like they were very focused on corporate and education with virtually no information about using their systems for voting. Obviously they do, because a couple of towns, some towns in Massachusetts use them, but I didn't go any further with them. So the 3 companies that I contacted were OTI, which is the same company we had make a presentation last time, Meridia, and Live Tally. I talked to representatives, I emailed and then talked to representatives from each of those 3 places first, just to make sure that they were doing this, that they were in this business. And then Tom, Steve, myself, and Mike Wells, and I also had a conversation with Mike, obviously, scheduled demos with each of those 3 companies. They were very extensive demos. Each of them was at least an hour long. Everybody had great questions. Thank you so much to Tom and Steve for helping out, and of course, Mike as well. It really provided a broad spectrum of questions to have several people involved. So after the 3 demos, then we had our own meeting, the 4 of us. We had a Zoom meeting and discussed, each of us presented what we felt about the 3 companies. We were consistent in our feelings about the differences. Everybody preferred Meridia significantly. And frankly, the most important reason was that their system can provide service on the football field at Westford Academy, no problem. And at the Abbott School, even if we're in 2 rooms, even if there's an overflow into the cafeteria, no problem. Actually, the other 2 systems were both significantly concerned about whether or not they would be able to do either of those 2 things. So that was the main reason, but there were other little things that were better about Meridia as opposed to the other 2. Another important thing to us was the fact that Meridia was specific about saying that they would have someone available for the presentation or introduction to town meeting, which we felt was very important, especially considering what happened last time. I think it's really going to be important to have somebody there who can specifically answer all the questions. Another thing was that they seem to have the best security. We all agreed on that their system seemed to be the most secure of the 3 that were presented. And I did send something out with some detail of what each of us thought, if you had a chance to look at it. I think that is the main part of it. So we really unanimously recommended that we go to that we suggest that the town use clickers at town meeting, specifically for at least votes where a count is required or requested, and B, that Meridia be the company that we use. And I do want to just back up a little because I started out not necessarily thinking this was a thing to do, but honestly, in looking at the towns that do it, there were no negative comments, none from any of the communities that are using electronic vote tabulators. And right now there are 61 towns in Massachusetts that are using them. So it's not like it was a few years ago when there were 10 or 12 towns. There are a lot of places using it now, and they all have positive things to say about it. The most positive thing being that it saves a whole lot of time. And that seems to be a significant thing in terms of getting people to want to come to the meeting. So Tom and Steve, did I leave anything out? Do you guys want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered everything, Angela. It was interesting when I think it was Valerie that talked about the length of the meeting, and I wrote that down as the second biggest comment. And I wrote next to my note, clickers would help this. I mean, if we used it for every vote, I think it would be great. If for some reason the town only wanted to use it when we needed counters, that would work too. But I personally would use it for every vote. I was super impressed with all of the other towns that use it. I know that Steve is connecting with the town of Wayland, who has written a plan for use. And so we'll get more information from Wayland.
And just the reason I say for votes where a count is required or requested, some of the moderators say that when you have a clearly unanimous vote, it's faster to just take a voice vote. It's actually quicker to do that. So they like having the flexibility of being able to say, you know, when it's pretty obvious what's going to happen, all in favor, and just get it done in 5 seconds instead of a minute and a half.
Sure.
Did everybody get a chance to read the document, first of all? Yes? Oh, no, I mean, you know, there's a lot going on. That's why I'm asking.
And I only sent it out 2 days ago, so.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I thought I didn't get a chance to read it, but I thought Angela's summary was helpful.
Angela, what are the steps here? What are you thinking after this meeting you're going to do?
I actually think Christina had her hand up though. Do you have your hand up, Christina?
Yeah.
I did. I was just curious, what are some of the other towns that are using this currently?
So I actually have a list. Can I share my screen, Alyssa? Because I can put the list up of the towns that are using Meridia.
Meridia.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Let me see.
Do you have the icon at the bottom?
Yeah, 1 second. I just have to make sure I have the right here. Okay. Now. Oh, that's not it. Is it? Sorry, bear with me 1 minute. It's the wrong thing. Here it is. Okay, now share screen. Okay, so these are the towns that are Meridia towns. If you can see those. Can you see those guys?
Yep.
Yep.
So would also be helpful if we knew if these were open town meeting or representative, which is not on here. Yeah, I mean, I could point to some towns that are similar to us, but it doesn't matter if we don't know if they have open town meeting.
Right. These seem to be smaller communities, right?
No, there's Dedham's on here, Westwood's on here, Northbridge, I think is close to us, Sturbridge, but again, I don't know if they have open town meeting or yeah, I can put something more informative together with regard to who uses what. But anyway, those are the towns that have.
So I can't see if anybody else has their hand raised. Christina, do you have more questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
And back to what your steps, what your thinking was, what the plan is.
In terms of what I'd like to do, if you guys feel like you need more information, then that's fine. We'll just put this off for tonight and I'll get you more information. If you're comfortable that you feel this is a way to go, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be recommending Meridia as a specific thing at this point in time. But if you're comfortable that this is a way to go, comfortable enough to vote on it, then I would tack on to the end of your meeting. I would ask to also be on the agenda at the select board next week and ask for their support. And if you're not.
And then what? What's the?
Oh, then if the selectmen will also support it, then I'm going to start public education. So I'd like to have the league maybe sponsor something that people can attend. Steve, we already talked about maybe having something on WestfordCAT that's informative for the voters. You know, I can set up just a specific meeting for people to come in and ask questions and discuss at the library or something. Just the general things that you would do for public education. Put out a PSA, articles, the same sort of thing we just did for the survey, an announcement on the, change the announcement on the moderator's page of the town website, get it in Jody's newsletter, all of those kinds of things.
With the goal of implementation at town meeting in June?
With the goal of having, and I'm actually meeting with Ellen Hardy to make sure I'm doing this the right way. I'm meeting with her on Thursday, but I think this is probably just a resolution. It's not a bylaw. Susan was right when she said the town moderator does not need the approval of town meeting to implement a specific method of voting, but I would never do it that way, especially after the last time. So I think probably it just needs to be a resolution at town meeting as to whether or not we want to use clickers in the future to count, or allow the moderator the discretion to use clickers in the future to count votes when a specific count is requested or required.
So you think, following that train of thought, you get voters' input in June with implementation at special town meeting?
October, yeah, absolutely. If the voters say yes, then I mean, that's the issue, is just getting public support for this. I'm sort of presuming the money, but it's.
Well, I was just going to ask about the money because I understand we don't have any. So that's why I'm asking.
This to me seems like a perfect use of ARPA funds, but I'm not a financial person. Christina's sitting right here. I don't want to presume that I know where the money is. What I know is, if we can do something for $20,000 that's going to be such a help to town meeting, that will make more people attend, that will make it easier for the clerk, that will make it easier for the people who are clerking at town meeting, for the people, the counters and all of those people, then it seems like money well worth being spent to me.
Mhm.
And I won't have a problem making that argument.
And so thinking buy or rent?
Well, again, I'm not the financial person. To me, renting is $1,000 to $3,000 a pop every time you use it. So that's twice a year. It doesn't take very long to get to the point where you've paid for a system you don't own yet. And the systems are, they say they last for 5 years, but there are many towns that have had them for close to 10 now. So, but I don't think that's my decision to make. I think Tom has his hand up. Diane.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to add that we were very impressed actually with all three companies.
Mhm.
And I took a lot of notes, and I just wanted to, Angela was looking for some of the towns and how many people they had at them, but I've got three of them here. The town of Wayland in June of 21 had 862 voters using a clicker system. The town of Orleans in October of 20 had 654. And the town of Nantucket in June of 21 had 1,074 voters, all using clickers. So I don't have the whole list of Meridia, but we know they work. And as Angela said, we asked numerous times, and I know she's talked to some of the other towns, there were no negatives for the use of clickers. People absolutely love them. I think as long as we can answer their questions up front about security and so forth.
Right.
So.
Right. Angela, in your write-up, the point about being able to use these outside was pointed out, underlined several times. And my past experience, with this was, yes, we can use them outside. Part of the interest in what do you call it? In embracing the clickers was make the vote and see it live on the screen in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's something we would have to talk about. I'm not a big fan of that, actually. I think that people should vote, and I haven't made a decision on that, but I mean, people vote, and Mike Wells has the screen in front of him that tells him what the vote is immediately, and then it's announced the same way it's announced when I'm looking out at the audience. I don't necessarily think people need to see it on a screen. So I don't think it matters whether we have a screen outside or screen inside or anything. I don't see that as an essential aspect of these types of systems.
Well, I was bringing up the screen point. They all do that, but I was bringing up the screen point because holding HM outside, we are not going to have screens.
Exactly, that's what I mean. I don't think the screen is essential at all.
But I do think the trust, the buy-in, the credibility factor goes up with the little clicker in my hand and being able to see something on the screen. Because if they don't, they're still just taking your word for it, right? Of what the totals were. And that's even.
Well, don't they always take my word for it?
I'm sorry.
It's not really different. It's not really different. It's and seeing it on the screen is just they don't come up as they're voting. It's just when the vote is finished, it says 88 yes, 645 no. That's all you see. So, I mean, to me, it doesn't make a big difference if I say 88 yes and 865 no, or if there's a green stripe and a red stripe on the screen. I don't know. That was something we'd have to talk about.
I'm differentiating it because without the clickers, it's the visibility end of it again, and the trust end, et cetera, that people get wrapped up into. So without the clickers, I see visibly, right, all the raised orange cards. So I have some sense of, oh my God, yes, all those people did vote. That's the difference I'm making here, that's all. So, questions? Sally.
I think Steve has had his hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just 2 points I wanted to make. Having sat through several rounds of ARPA funding discussions with the select board so far, I would say, yes, this seems like a no-brainer for ARPA funding. It's a drop in the bucket compared to the scale of the whole ARPA pile of money that is being divvied up. And then also, in terms of renting versus buying, I think it actually might make some sense to rent for the first one, just to make sure that people are happy with the system and that we don't buy the whole system and then after the first meeting, people say, I don't know if I like this. But yeah, that's all for me.
Yeah. Okay. Sally now.
So I also had 2 points to make. The first is that something that I saw come up in the survey was that at least a couple of people mentioned that they want clickers for the anonymous vote so that they're not having to sit there with an orange card up in the air in front of their friends and neighbors.
Okay. Yep.
That's something that's holding them back from wanting to participate. So if that helps your argument, Angela, that is something that we saw. And then I just wanted to say in our survey, there was a ton of support for clickers. Okay. Both in people who attend and don't. People asked for that in the written out comments again and again and again. Of course, there was also a couple of things that said nothing electronic, nothing, don't change anything. Of course, you're always going to get both sides, but it was overwhelming, the amount of people who mentioned clickers in those surveys.
Okay. So what do we need tonight? What are you asking for tonight? A vote of support?
I guess I'm asking if you're comfortable taking a vote to support bringing forward the use of clickers as a counting device at town meeting. I don't think we have to vote on what provider we're going to use. That's really right. Not even in my wheelhouse. I don't.
Okay,
I can tell the select board or whoever makes the decision. These are the people we looked at. This was our outcome. Okay. It's really not my decision to make.
Okay, personally, I'm fine with the vote of support for clickers. I'm not there yet for the particular product. So if that works for you, that's fine. Valerie.
I know you talked a little bit about what your next steps are after the select board meeting. But can I just better understand, is the urgency, like, I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between bringing this with a show of support to the select board next week versus that April meeting that we're looking for with like the full slate of recommendations. Is there like a timeline as far as like getting, I'm sorry, did you say that we're not trying this in June, right?
I would like to have a vote in June.
So it would be on like a warrant article?
I think it's probably a resolution.
Okay, sorry.
But it would be on I would ask the selectmen to put it on the warrant as a resolution.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it would just be like any other sort of you're holding forums and educating in order to pass that vote. So
That's
okay.
the reason. I would really just like to get started with that. I think getting it out there as soon as possible is the right way to do it.
So there's no like equipment timeline there's no like lead time for that or anything. Okay. So I guess that's my only question is then do we bring this up first separately or does it fall in line with all the recommendations we're thinking about in April?
So one question, when, Angela, is the timeline for submitting a resolution for June?
Well, a resolution can be made on the floor. A resolution can be made from the floor.
Okay.
But that wouldn't be my preference.
Right.
My preference would be to get this out there, that every time the select board goes through the warrant before it's finalized, they're saying, and 13 is a placeholder for a resolution for the use of clickers at town meeting. And it's just one way of getting it out there all the time. And I would like to go to the select board next week. I would like to have your support in doing that. And I know that means you're saying you support this in advance of saying you're supporting anything else. But because I want to do something on, I guess I'm sort of making it more important than anything.
You are.
Wow.
Wow. This was, according to last month's notes, the whole clicker implementation was for the long term. So I think some of us are being caught off guard, right, regarding this. So, but Dana.
Sorry, can someone remind me what our previous vote was? Was it to support Angela's research into the clickers?
Yes, the exploration. We supported the exploration of using clickers. That's as far as we got.
For me, the fact that we voted to support that, I feel like that also shows that we would support the use of clickers. Otherwise, why would we support her going down a path that we weren't in favor of? So I think I kind of lean towards what Valerie was saying, having it be part of the whole recommendation package rather than something separate.
Christina?
So I'm actually going to deviate, and I think we probably should. Well, let me say, I would be in favor of voting favorably for clickers, for Angela to bring this as a resolution. And I'm sort of leaning towards us saying that now to give her the time that she needs to put that education out there. I just quickly looked up the timeline, and I think the deadline for resolutions is April 5th. So if we waited until our meeting, we might miss it if we don't go till the 19th. So while I do like the idea of bringing it all as one big package, if Angela wants to do this for June, I think it's going to be too late to wait for our April meeting with the select board.
Okay. Did someone make a motion? Any other comments?
Yes. Yes, just very, very quick comment. I'm a very big fan of making forest level recommendations, forest level votes. I think it's crystal clear that, that we support the use of clickers, and I think we can make a very clear vote. Clickers should be used as soon as possible, and not worry about at this point trying to vote on the details. I think what we should always try to do is give someone like Angela authority to work out the details. But, you know, I think what she needs is the political capital of that. We're all behind this, and we think that it's a fantastic way of making access better to town meeting. And I think we're there. So I think we should certainly just have a vote that says we support the use of clickers. Angela and all the work that she's done is going to work on the details of how that gets done. But all of that's going to get done as part of a recommendation, you know, a specific recommendation that we already support. So I'm ready to vote.
Yeah, if I can just add on the timing issue, there's only 4 months between now and the June town meeting. And so the earlier we get the information out to voters, that's the longer that they have to think about clickers before they get to town meeting. I think last year, the year before last, whenever we presented it, that night was pretty much the first that anybody had heard of clickers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a major reason for the failing of the motion. So
You're going to hear that again this time too. There are always those people who.
I'm sure.
Right.
I'm sure. But if we can get information out, I mean, literally as early as next week's Board of Selectmen's meeting, that gives people more time to think about it. So I'm in favor of doing that next week.
So someone make a motion?
Can I say one more thing before you move?
Yes.
I'll be very, very quick. The last thing is that, you know, if you vote to support tonight and I go out and start trying to gather public support and everything, it doesn't prevent you from, again, adding it into your package in April and saying part of your recommendation is the support of resolution in Article 17 on the warrant. You know, it still can be part of your recommendation.
Right. I would agree with that. If the committee wants to move forward on that, I would agree. That's logical if that's, you know, the end result. So if it's a letter, if it's support, you know, I'm personally fine with that. It was a specific product that I don't know if I was really ready to commit to right this minute. But if someone wants to make a motion, we can take a vote.
So I'll make a motion that this group, the ATM group, strongly support the use of clickers at a future town meeting, and that we bring it up as a resolution at the June 6th. I think it's June 6th town meeting.
I think it's the 11th.
I'm sorry, the 11th.
Yeah, 10th or 11th. I just.
Yeah.
Second.
Valerie seconds it. Okay, all in favor? Christina?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Steve?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Did I get everybody?
Yourself.
Myself, everybody? Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very, very much. So I'll see you next week.
Okay. Quick question back to that. Will they do, because I remember last time, too many memories, the company did a free trial. Will they do the first meeting free?
Well, again, we don't know which company we're going to use.
True. Will any of them?
I feel like they will. I feel like they're anxious to, they're all anxious to get into more Massachusetts communities, so.
Okay. Any other questions on that topic? Okay, unless anybody has anything more, I think it's a wrap. I'll send out a doodle poll. In the interim, the working groups will work on their pieces. And I'll send you, when I push the button, the presentation for Tuesday. I'll probably touch bases with the leads just before I do that. But it's the same information we've already discussed and with the survey and the questionnaires, but I now have to bump up, Valerie, the number that I had in there. So think I had 775 was the last number I knocked. And from action items, the rest of us need to go and pull down flyers that exist anywhere so that they don't stay up, forever. So unless people have questions, I think it's a wrap.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor? Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Everybody.
I-
Good night, everybody.